When you see how well these things retain value on the used market, yeah, we kind of get it. This doesn't feel up to scratch.
Now, the model we're covering, you might just think it's a bit of a cosmetic facelift, but mechanically speaking, there are a lot of changes.
The ride quality just lacks any refinement at all. Has the update fixed that in any way? Now, you already know about the Hilux's amazing reputation for reliability. You know these are often one of Australia's highest selling cars, and you know Toyota arguably have an unmatched support network. But are the more recent examples still worthy of the hype? Are they worth the huge premiums they ask on the used market? And should you ever seriously consider buying a used example? Well, we're going to answer all of those questions and so many more. Like, what goes wrong with these? Actually, let's start with that. Actually, before we get into this, we just need to say a massive thank you to our sponsor for this video, Idemitsu. More on that later. Okay, first of all, starting with the exterior, quite a few owners have mentioned that the paint along the leading edge of the roof here, just where it meets the windscreen, is a little bit on the thin side. And if you get a stone chip, it can start to rust. But good news here, if you get onto that right away, it should mitigate the rust growing any further. And our hot tip here is to jump on the owners groups and forums, because there are plenty of great tutorials on how to sort that out. Also, just on rust issues as well, unfortunately, more and more owners are reporting that they're getting hundreds, if not thousands, of little rust dots all over the car. But the thing is, that's not the Hilux or Toyota's fault at all. According to the owners, this is what can happen if some dickhead has used a grinder near the Hilux, especially if they're fitting any accessories or grinding the back of it to fit a canopy. That's because depending on the model, you might have to cut into the headboard to fit the canopy. And if they've used like an angle grinder instead of a reciprocating saw, that can just spray little metal particles all over the car, and it results in these rust issues. Actually, this is a great example of something we say all of the time. If the car you're looking at, especially a four-wheel drive like this, is fitted with aftermarket accessories, are those parts quality items, and have they been fitted professionally? Next up, a few owners have complained that their tailgate central locking actuator can play up. Now, the good news here is it's generally fixed under warranty, although some owners have had the problem come back time and time again. In saying that, it's not a common issue at all, quite sporadic. Also, if you're planning on driving through any water crossings, Toyota updated the drainage plugs in the bottoms of the doors, because previously the doors could fill with water. Just make sure they've been done. But besides that, we wouldn't say there are any other further issues that are inherently the car's fault as such. Really, the only other exterior issues you're going to run into are going to be down to who the previous owner was and how they treated it. For example, if they've done a few beach runs, how meticulous have they been with cleaning it afterwards? If they've taken it deep off-road, how much mechanical sympathy have they shown it? Look, there's a whole bunch of telltale signs you need to watch out for here, and to check them out, go and watch our Ultimate 4x4 Buyer's Guide, because it will explain everything. Now, even though this generation, or the N80 Hilux, has been around since 2015, and there was an update in 2017 and another update in 2020, in this video we're just going to be focusing on those third iteration models. And why is that? Well, it's because we've already made a full video of the first and second iterations of the N80 already. However, a quick warning, if you do go and watch that video, just know it was one of the first videos we kind of got around to making, and you can tell that ReDriven has evolved quite a lot since then, so cut us some slack. Go easy on us in the comments. Anyway, like the earlier iterations, the post-2020 Hiluxes have been available in dozens of different configurations, featuring everything from single, extra, and double cab bodies with pickup or cab chassis rear ends. You can then choose between rear-wheel drive high rider, and four-wheel drive running gear. And good news for the four-wheel drive models, because they come with a rear diff lock as standard. Engine-wise, the vast majority on the used market will feature a 2.8 litre turbo diesel. However, a 2.4 litre turbo diesel is available on lower spec variants, as well as a 2.7 litre petrol. And just on the variants, the range consists primarily of the base spec Workmate, mid-spec SR, and the slightly fancier SR5, although the Rogue, Rugged X, and GR Sport all add a load of accessories to keep things interesting at the top end of the model range. And obviously what mechanical package and configuration is available will depend on what the actual trim spec is, but if you do need all of those specific details, as well as all of the common issues written out so they're really easy to refer to, go to redriven.com and check out the completely free Hilux cheat sheet, because it will answer all of your questions. But what actually changed with this third iteration? Well, you know what? A whole lot. Engine-wise, Toyota extracted some more power so the Hilux could compete with the competition, plus they recalibrated the accelerator tune for a more accurate and smoother power delivery, and therefore hopefully improved fuel economy. Plus recently, and depending on the spec, they added a 48-volt mild hybrid system to further improve fuel efficiency and limit emissions. The other benefit with this is that the stop-start system is far less intrusive. Suspension-wise, the shocks were recalibrated, the bushes were improved, and the rear leaf springs were revised to make the ride more comfortable when there's nothing in the tray. Plus, Toyota added a host of features like additional traction control functions, more safety tech, and they finally updated the infotainment system. Although it's not all good news for the infotainment system, but we'll cover that when we get inside. Now, pricing-wise, at the cheap end of the spectrum, high kilometre post-update workmates, they kick off from around about $25,000. At the other end of the spectrum, low kilometre near new like Rogues or even Rugged X's loaded with aftermarket accessories, sometimes over $100,000. But remember, we are talking about a Hilux here, so that means it is going to cop a fair bit of Toyota tax. That basically means that you're going to be paying a premium for a Hilux over an equivalent model from the competition. And look, plenty of people cannot justify this Toyota tax, but when you see how well these things retain value on the used market, yeah, we kind of get it. For example, this actual SR5 a couple of years ago was asking about $60,000. It owes about $70,000 with the aftermarket mods. Reed, that owns it, is currently selling it. You know how much he can expect to get for it? Yeah, about $70,000. Now look, if you are trying to identify between a pre and a post update car, the third iteration looks a lot more American. Now this hasn't happened by accident because Toyota have used the Tundra and the Tacoma as the inspiration for this update. And you can tell because it's got the big grille and the kind of angry squinty headlights. And I don't know about you, but I really like the way these look. Obviously this actual example is certainly helped by the lovely wheels and the lift kit and a few other accessories, but even in standard form, good looking thing. However, can I ask a favor here? Look, spend your money however you want, but if you're going to buy a Hilux and jack it up and chuck massive wheels and tires on it and a full catalogue worth of accessories, can you actually take it off-road, please? Look, I'm sure we've all seen this countless times, but how often do you see a Hilux with every conceivable modification and yet clearly it's never seen an inch of dirt? I mean, am I the only one that just finds that a bit pathetic? Anyway, speaking of pathetic, let's get inside and talk about the infotainment system. So look, it is great that Toyota finally included Apple CarPlay and Android Auto about 600 years after every other manufacturer. And yes, this is a massive improvement over the earlier infotainment systems, but so many owners are still complaining that this thing just sucks. They're reporting things like the operation is just really slow, or the Bluetooth drops out, or the interface isn't intuitive at all, and the whole thing just feels a whole generation old. Now, the hot tip here from many owners is just to bin this entire system and fit a quality aftermarket unit. And while you're at it, why not update the speakers and fit some more sound deadening inside as well, because that will make a hell of a difference. Now, the next common complaint, and this is going to vary depending on your body shape and weight distribution, but plenty of owners have complained that they just can't get comfortable in the seats, and that the seats can actually give you a bit of a numb bum or sore lower back over long journeys. And you know what? Yeah, I tend to agree. No matter what I do, I just can't seem to get comfortable in terms of ergonomics. There's lots of adjustability, but it's like the steering wheel needs to come out a little bit further, and the seats are okay, but they're definitely not as plush as some of the seats in the competition. Actually, if you're a Hilux fan, you're going to hate me saying this, but I still think that the Amarok, even the previous generation Amarok, it still wins for the interior comfort and fit and finish and feel. Now, this next issue, it's not a common one at all, but quite a few owners have had a problem with the air conditioning just completely dying. Now, the good news here is that it is covered under warranty, but the bad part of that is that for some owners, they've had to wait up to 3 months or even longer for the problem to be diagnosed, the parts to be ordered in, and then the car booked in to actually get repaired. Now, this is not ideal if we're talking up to 12 weeks of no air conditioning in Australia's hot summer. Now, I do keep referring to the owners groups and forums, and that's because we joined a bunch of those owners groups and forums to do the research with this. And I've got to say a massive thank you to everybody that assisted with the research for this video. And also a huge shout out to Reed for lending us his Hilux for the shoot. Mate, you're a bloody legend. Thank you so much. Now, aside from all of that, I do tend to agree with plenty of the owners out there and potential owners as well, that this interior, it just doesn't feel like what a $70,000 interior should feel like. Look, don't get me wrong, it doesn't feel cheap and nasty at all, but it also doesn't feel in any way, shape or form premium. Like really the only soft things in here are the armrests and the seats, and that's about it. Honestly, everything else is very hard plastic, which is great for resilience. These things, you can treat them like absolute crap and they still come back for more. Even the switchgear, it just all feels a bit light, and it just feels I know it's 70,000 bucks, 60,000 bucks. Even for $50,000, this doesn't feel up to scratch. And especially when you consider that there are plenty of other vehicles in this class that are asking less than what a Hilux asks, even on the used market, that have interiors that feel far more special than this. And then as far as using this interior in terms of practicality at least, you've got storage bin here, okay size glove box. Actually the glove box is a bit small. Spot for your phone just there. 2 cup holders here. Spot for more crap here. Decent sized bin here. Door bins are pretty good. Spot for life's filth just here. Got a sunglasses holder here. What does Reed wear? He wears Ray-Bans. Well done, Reed. And also, you've got hidden cup holders here and here. But I've got an issue with these. See, because the standard ride in these is so jiggly, when you put a coffee there, and unfortunately I know this from experience, what happens, the coffee kind of froths itself and starts bubbling out of the little mouth hole part, and then it pours all over the window switches and the mirror control switch, and even over your leg. And if you're wearing shorts, it's bloody hot and it hurts. Now, besides the underwhelming infotainment tech, what other features are you going to get? Well, look, obviously this is going to vary depending on the trim spec you're looking at. But if you want more than 2 speakers, you're going to need to get an SR. If you want luxuries like carpet and dual zone climate control, you're going to need an SR5 like this one. And if you're after all of the bells and whistles, well, check out the Rogue, the Rugged X, or the GR Sport. And good news here in terms of safety features, because all Hiluxes of this iteration come standard with the full suite of Toyota Safety Sense technology. We're talking AEB, high-speed adaptive cruise control, lane departure warnings, and road sign assist, and so much more. And again, if you need all the specific details on the features and the safety equipment, ReDriven.com, it's all on the cheat sheet. Now, did you know this generation of Hilux has actually won the grueling Dakar Rally 3 times in the last few years? And interestingly, I'm exactly 10 centimeters taller than the guy responsible for steering these things to victory, Nasser Al Attiyah. This is in my driving position, and it's okay, I guess. There's an okay amount of foot room, and there's a bit of knee room, and the seat's kind of comfy. It does annoy me that the seat's almost at a 90-degree angle, so you end up sitting like the textbook version of how you should sit in primary school, like this. So that's not that comfortable. It's no better or worse than any other vehicle in this class. It's okay. However, there is a common complaint back here, and it's that this section of the seat doesn't fold forward. So if you want to put some slimline batteries in or a 12-volt system, it's so hard to get in there. Also, it's really hard to put seat covers on these because, again, it doesn't flip forward. These seats, they do flip up, so there's a little bit of storage under the seats, and you've got your own air vents here, but there's no USB ports. Got little pull-down hooks for your groceries just there. There's door bins, but good luck actually getting to the door bin if the door's closed and you've got legs of any form. And you can collect more of life's filth and crap just here. So practicality features in the back are okay-ish. Then when it comes to practicality in the back, well, obviously it's practical. It is a ute. And look, while it is great that the Hilux features one of the longest and widest tubs in its class, unfortunately, the gap between the wheel arches is one of the narrowest in the class. Also, it's great that Toyota upgraded the towing capacity from 3.2 tonne to 3.5 tonne for the automatic four-wheel drive models. But as we always say, towing something that's heavier than the tow vehicle itself is just asking for trouble. And also, please double and triple check your weights compared to the Hilux's GVM and GCM, because we know of scenarios where vehicles that have had an accident that have exceeded these figures have then voided their insurance. And that could equate to $70,000 or more just gone, vanished. Just please don't let that be you. Now, when it comes to common complaints and what goes wrong in terms of the driving experience, the big one that the Hilux has always copped is that the ride quality just lacks any refinement at all. Has the update fixed that in any way? Well, in terms of this example, we can't really comment on that because it obviously features aftermarket suspension, and more on that in a minute. But of all of the owners and even car journo mates I've spoken to in regards to driving different iterations of the Hilux, the update has made a bit of a difference, kind of, not really. See, even with the update, I still feel like this is where the Hilux really drops the ball. A Navara with the coil-sprung rear end, it's actually quite nice to drive on-road. And an Amarok and a Ranger, even in standard form, it just feels like they've really nailed their suspension calibration. But in Hiluxes, just a bit of a mess. It's like they went for the absolute cheapest option they could. Although maybe that's because Toyota just assume you're going to do what Reed has done with this one and just fit an aftermarket suspension setup in the first place. And I tell you what, in terms of this setup, it is one of the best modifications you can make to a Hilux. Look, it is still really bloody firm, but it's removed so much of the jiggle out of the ride, and especially at speed, it just feels so much more controlled and secure. It's far more enjoyable to drive, even around traffic and in Sydney on these streets. I can't believe the difference it's made. Still far from perfect, but a bloody big improvement. And aside from the suspension, obviously with the update you get a little bit more power, and that's nice, I guess. It's not a game changer in any way, shape or form, but yeah, it's nice to have. And aside from all that, you know what? It drives like pretty much every other dual cab ute in this category and class. It's no better, no worse, not that impressive. It just does the job. But you know what? With this suspension and these tires, it goes from being pretty underwhelming to pretty much average. The thing is though, and look, I'm sure you've experienced this, it does seem like a lot of dual cab ute owners, especially ones of modified Hiluxes and Rangers, drive like complete assholes. And yet here I am driving a modified Hilux, and it's not encouraging me to tailgate every single car in front of me or try to set some new land speed record at every single opportunity. So therefore, maybe that kind of dickhead behavior isn't inspired by the car at all. But look, back to the car, what about mechanical issues? What can go wrong with these things? Well, unfortunately, I can't answer that question because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Now, the majority of these are the 2.8 litre diesel, and there are some with a 2.4, which is a very similar engine, and 2.7 petrol in the lesser spec'd workmate models. Look, the petrols we're going to cover in another video, but today we're just going to talk about the 2.8s. This update, mechanically speaking, some of the changes, there's a long list. The turbo is different, the fuel injectors are different, the pistons and rings are different, the alternator is different, the head gasket's different, the blockers had changes, the exhaust manifold is different, and the EGR has been revised too. Now, all of these changes have made a really big difference to reliability. Although they do still occasionally have some DPF issues and fifth injector complications, hardly at all compared to the pre-2020 models. Now, the timing chain issues of the old version, virtually unheard of, although there are a few complications with some of the lubrication and some of the tensioner on the lower chain, but still hardly at all compared to the old ones. And any of these that do have issues, they are still covered by warranty, and Toyota now actually have a 10-year warranty on those DPF, so you are safe for a very long time. But just keep in mind, sooner or later there will be no warranty, but that's a problem for much later. They also changed the transmission mapping. There were a lot of complaints previously about how poorly it shifted and the way it locked up and the way it didn't lock up. 2020 onwards, facelift, much improved. Some of the biggest failures, and some of them catastrophic, have actually come from overheating. Not that that's a fault with the car, typically. The ones that are overheating are towing a huge caravan. They've got a huge bull bar on the front with a winch and a set of lights, and that's affecting the airflow and the cooling, and they overheat. These things do not like being overheated, and typically when they overheat, that's game over for these things. So if you have one, yeah, a bit of mechanical sympathy when you're towing, and also make sure you don't block up the radiator with a whole bunch of accessories. And look, we say this with pretty much every dual cab ute. A lot of the problems you might have with these are from the previous owner, whether it's been flogged off-road or some of the aftermarket accessories may not have been fitted properly. So just have a good look at all that stuff. Make sure it's quality equipment that's been fitted properly.
Now back to our sponsor for this video, Idemitsu. And you know what, if you're watching this from Australia, there's a chance that you might not even know what Idemitsu even is. Idemitsu is the world's top-selling Japanese lubricant manufacturer, and they've been pioneering oil technology for over 100 years. And although you might not know the name, there's actually a chance that you've unknowingly used their oil in your car. Idemitsu is the OEM oil supplier for brands like Toyota, Mazda, Mitsubishi, and Honda. And here's a fun fact, if you've bought a Toyota in the last 30 years, there's a high chance it started its life running on Idemitsu oil. Now, you can buy their high quality oil for your car and enjoy the benefits of their 100-year quest to make the world's finest motor oil. While many oil brands use an all-purpose formula aimed at a wide range of vehicles, Idemitsu's nano-tailored technology offers the precision of advanced lubrication, ensuring optimal engine performance and protection specifically designed for Japanese cars. The importance of using the right oil for your car, it cannot be overstated. And with Idemitsu's oil, you're using a product that's been backed by decades of innovation and research. To explore the selection, hit the link below and consider trying Idemitsu for yourself. But the other issue that the Hilux has is just the huge range of other vehicles that you could buy instead. See, being one of the country's most competitive categories of car, you have the ever popular Volkswagen Amarok and Ford Ranger, which both will often ask Hilux style premiums. You have the midfield contenders like the twins under the skin Mazda BT50 and Isuzu D-Max, or arguably the value for money pick, the Mitsubishi Triton, or if you're happy to swap leaf springs for coils, the Nissan Navara. Then you have the more recent and potentially controversial new contenders like the LDV T60, SsangYong Musso, GWN Canon Alpha, and JAC T9. And then if you're happy to spend, let's say, premium Hilux money, you also have cars like the Ram 1500, the Ford F-150, Chevrolet Silverado, Jeep Gladiator, and Toyota Tundra. But when you include the Hilux, which is the best of all of these? Well, none of them, and all of them. As we say anytime we review anything in this category, they're all pretty bloody good, and they're all a bit shit. Which one you should buy really comes down to what you need it to do and what you can afford. Financially, a Hilux seems to make pretty good sense. In terms of reliability, it's a matter of so far so good. And if anything were to go wrong, the support network is huge. And overall, this third generation of N80 seems to be the best Hilux yet. And look, as it should be, because Toyota have had time to iron out any of the bugs. Don't get me wrong, this thing is far from perfect, but if you can find a perfectly maintained Hilux that ticks all the critical pre-purchase inspection boxes, and you can afford the Toyota tax, as well as the suspension and infotainment mods to get them sorted out, yeah, buy one. However, as I alluded to in my rant before, when it comes to Hiluxes that have been modified but never go off-road, we argue that a lot of people shopping for these don't need anything like this at all. They're just buying them to stroke their ego and to, I don't know, exude some kind of image of masculinity. And if this sounds like you, but you still need a vehicle that expresses and exudes masculinity while also still being very, very practical, we think you should buy one of these instead. But if you weren't to buy these or this, what would you buy instead and why? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Is currently selling it. It's about 2 years old, and as a car, it's going to ruin the taste.
The facelift, why can't I talk? Okay. The facelift also, I'm not going to say that word.